Deku's journey in the Marvel Universe continues. In Part 2, new battles await. Can he rise to the challenge? Trapped in a glass cage, tied hand and foot, held captive by his captors, Loki was taken to the S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier, where he would be interrogated at a given moment, after attending to a new unexpected guest. One almost impossible to stop if not for the circumstances. The cage remained illuminated by a dim light, clearly revealing the haughty smile of the Norse god who was captive inside a cage that, somehow, had not been prepared for someone like him. And through the loudspeakers, Loki could hear the firm footsteps approaching his cage, surrounding him as he felt himself being analyzed with the gaze of the expected and predictable insignificant being he had met not long ago. Loki felt no threat whatsoever. Humans didn't inspire him with even a sense of caution. He didn't fear even the handful of circuses that were gathered, because, to him, they were as predictable as seeing his enemy's cards in plain sight. Nor did he fear his brother. He knew how to manage to defeat him, even when he didn't possess the glorified strength that Loki possessed. However, Loki could feel wary of someone who was unexpected. The Herald Boy. However, for now, he could only wait and pull the strings with those present. And when the time came, he would act. But for now, he only had one thing to do: have fun. Before his eyes, Nick Fury stood next to a touchscreen that monitored the remote surveillance of Loki's cage. The spy agent made a few movements on the glass screen, and the sound of gears echoed around the cage. Fury turned his gaze toward the captive Norse god and threatened. In case it wasn't clear. If you try to escape, a simple scratch on that glass, said Fury, pulling down a small lever. And in action, the floor where Loki's cage was suspended collapsed, as if it were a special hatch. Loki couldn't help but direct his gaze to the vanished floor. There was nothing but emptiness and mist, accompanied by a terrifying hum of air filtering through the hatch. 9,000 meters high in a free fall inside a steel trap. Do you understand how it works? Were Fury's rhetorical words as he deactivated the trap, sawing the hatch, and securing Loki in his cage. Bug, he said, showing his hands to Loki. Boot, he explained simply, pointing to the touchscreen control at the edge of his hands. In response to his demonstration, Loki just smiled, occasionally chuckling. And after a few seconds of silence, Loki began to talk. It's definitely an impressive cage. I doubt it was made for me, was it? Loki argued indirectly, seeing the serious expression of the senior agent standing in front of him. Well, at a considerable distance from him. They were designed for someone stronger than you, Fury replied with another hint, making the god smile. Oh, that's right, Loki said, grinning wickedly as he turned his gaze toward one of the cameras to his left, his grin widening. Let me guess. A wild beast who thinks he's still a man. How desperate are you, gathering discarded creatures to defend yourself? To defend you? Definitely pathetic, Loki said, grinning wickedly, delighting in Fury's grim expression as he leaned closer to the glass of the cage. How desperate am I? You threaten my world with war, and you steal a weapon you'll never be able to control. You talk all about peace, but you kill. And you do it for fun to boot. It's because of you that I feel so desperate. Maybe you'll regret it, Fury threatened again, while Loki, for his part, just mocked the lead agent's words. I notice you're very arrogant. Maybe it's because the Herald Boy is on your side? Maybe. But you're very angry anyway. Frustrated by being so close to possessing the third act. Of possessing that power, unlimited, right? And for what? Loki mocked, as he directed his gaze towards the cameras that surrounded him. A warm light for humanity? I'll remind them what real power is. Loki said, expressing a dark tone that came from the lips of the Norse god who was still captive. Fury, for his part, didn't like Loki's words at all. He had decided that at this moment he would have nothing to do with the Norse god for the moment. A sarcastic smile appeared on Fury's face, and he simply began to leave the place. Yeah, let me know if the royal authorities want a magazine or something, Fury said calmly, moving away from the section where Loki was, to go over to the boys. On the other side, in one of the main rooms located in the center of the ship, Captain Rogers could only think about the god's last words. Banner was somewhat anxious, unsure of staying in this place any longer. Thor was standing, thinking about the problems involved in solving these latest Loki pranks. His brother had to be held accountable. Izuku, for his part, sat in his seat, observing the situation that this threat entailed. Gods, universes, and highly classified agents carrying weapons capable of annihilating a planet. Izuku hadn't thought it would end in something like this. Not even in his wildest dreams. He just hoped things would be resolved, and that David could find him as soon as possible. And after grinding the scientist's bones and cutting Melissa's hair, then he would calm down, and leave everything at hand. Natasha, for her part, remained calm, watching Izuku and their interactions. For the time being, she had to focus on this situation as well, and avoid worrying about her Loki-possessed friend. Thinking she'd had enough of this silence, Banner tried to break it. "I guess you can get attached to him, right?" Banner said with a touch of humor, though he'd never thought of adding humor to something as alarming as this situation. "Loki won't tell us anything. So, Thor, what's your plan?" Rogers asked the other Asgardian on the ship. Thor, on the other hand, answered without concern. "He has an army called the Chitauri. They're not from Asgard, or any other known world. Their plan is to subjugate humans, and they'll win Earth for him. In return, I suppose he'll give them the third act," Thor explained, leaving those present a little frozen by the meaning of those words. "So, he has the backing of an entire army. One from space," Rogers said thoughtfully. "So you're going to build another portal. And for that, you need Dr. Eric Selvey," Banner concluded. "Selvey?" Thor asked. "That's right, it's a physical star," Banner explained. "He's a friend. I don't see how Selvey can help my brother," Thor said. "Loki has him under a spell. And he also has one of our people," Natasha explained. "I don't understand why he surrendered like that. He won't be leading his army from here," Rogers added seriously. "I don't see why we should focus on Loki. He lost his mind a long time ago. I'd say he's crazier than a goat," Banner said, fed up with this. "Hey, watch your words. He may have lost his mind, but he's still Asgard. And he's my brother," Thor said. "Loki killed more than 80 people in less than 2 days, Natasha argued seriously, leaving Thor somewhat embarrassed. She had nothing to add to her brother's defense. "Well, he's adopted." Thor's only words were, causing the others to sigh in exhaustion. While Banner tried to understand the implications of making a portal possible again, Izuku stood up from his seat to leave the room where the restless crowd was gathered. But before he could leave, someone approached Izuku. The young man couldn't help but smile at the person who approached him. "I guess you're feeling bored with all this meaningless science, aren't you?" Natasha asked playfully, striking up a small conversation with Izuku. "Well, it's not exactly rocket science. I came out of a portal the same way," Izuku said calmly, turning his gaze toward the girl. "And what about you? Are you bored too?" Izuku asked. "Actually, yes. But, honestly, I couldn't help but notice that you're feeling uneasy?" Natasha explained calmly, watching Izuku nod in resignation. "I feel lost. Even though this feels like home, there's nothing that makes me feel comfortable, not in this world. Maybe this sounds childish, but I already want to go home. And I just want some space to get some air. Maybe a walk among the clouds will calm my nerves," Izuku explained seriously, and Natasha nodded. "I'd like to say that I understand. But your situation is more complicated than we might think," Natasha said, and Izuku shared her words with the woman. For now, Izuku would just finish lending a helping hand to these people, and then he would leave this place. He longed to return home. "And what will you do when this is over? Where will you go? As far as I know, you have nothing and no one," Natasha said, and Izuku understood the female spy. Izuku also couldn't help but feel somewhat surprised by that question. It was as if she thought that, somehow, Izuku would end up on Earth. But Izuku didn't dwell on the subject any longer and answered. "Well, I don't really know. I might ask Thor to take me to his house to find a more advanced alternative solution to my situation. The thing is, they already have the technology to teleport, whether it's magic or whatever Thor uses. He agreed to help me when this is over," Izuku said calmly, looking at Natasha thoughtfully. "Well, if that's what you want to do, I have no problem with that," Natasha said calmly, shrugging her shoulders. "In any case, if you want to stay a while until your people find you, don't forget you can count on us. Shield will help you," Natasha added before leaving. Izuku, for his part, just shrugged and nodded. He definitely wouldn't let Fury recruit him. He had responsibilities in his world, even if, thanks to the new generation of heroes, including himself, he had technically made his world peaceful. The reality was that the villains no longer wanted to confront the new heroic generations, for fear of losing the little territory of darkness they had left. Day by day, people became more aware of their actions, and the Hero Federation had implemented a program to end the cycle of fighting and violence as quickly as possible. They had to understand that fighting villains wasn't just a spectacle for the public, and with the support of the United Nations, Izuku and the Heroic Association had set modern society on an ideal path. It was a new age of heroism. The Crystal Age. Anyway, Izuku had no intention of ending up as a spy for Fury. They had to take care of their own business, Like the shit they just did. Without further ado, Izuku wandered through the corridors, looking for a hatch that would take him to the surface of this flying ship. But as he was about to turn a corner, strange sparks began to surround him, forming a golden circle that kept Izuku in place. Cautious because of the previous events, Izuku remained calm, alert to any strange anomalies that might occur. He was already very stressed out from being in this strange world, full of distinctive gods, special agents, planetary bombs, and poor timekeeping. But then, against all logic, the ground beneath Izuku's feet disappeared, catching Izuku by surprise, sending him tumbling in an unknown direction. However, wherever Izuku was now, he never fell to the ground this time. Izuku had activated his power while hovering in his strange new surroundings. Without a second thought, Izuku began searching for any clues to recognize his surroundings, finally seeing clearly what kind of place this was. Without a doubt, this was a distinctive temple. He didn't know what kind of temple it was, but that didn't matter. The important thing was to find a way out of this place. He was already fed up with so many portal jumps. I don't know who brought me here. I won't let them take me down without a fight, Izuku said seriously, as he heard someone's footsteps approaching his location. However, a voice pulled him out of place. There's no need for a fight, Deku. I'm not as comfortable with violence as you are, a woman in front of Izuku said. She smiled calmly, making it clear she wasn't hostile. Izuku didn't detect any danger in her either. How do you know about me? Izuku asked cautiously, still looking serious about the situation. Oh, I know a lot about you, Izuku Midoriya. I know that you're not from this world, and that you wish to leave this strange place. I know so many things about you, like that you'll become a living legend on this side of reality and the universe. The woman expressed serenely, as if her voice reflected a long and extensive experience about her. Izuku, for his part, was more astonished than he could show. This woman certainly caught his attention. Who are you? What is this place? Izuku asked, now deactivating his power, as he looked at the woman next to him. For the moment, she had taken up Izuku's full attention. Well, I've been called many names. The Master, the Mystic, the High Soul, or the Elder. You can call me Ancestral, the woman introduced herself simply, while fixing her gaze on her own temple. As for where you are, you're in Kathmandu, Nepal. This is the sacred temple of Kamar Taj, the older woman explained calmly. Given the woman's serenity, Izuku could only sigh with some denial. If his orientation wasn't mistaken, he was currently in India, more or less. I guess you brought me here, Izuku said seriously, thinking about the possibilities of this woman's potential, who, it seemed, had the air of knowing everything, even about him. Well, you guessed right, Midoriya. And no, I don't have what your dimension calls a quirk. Things don't work the same way on this side, Ancestral replied, as she began to take a short walk. The bald woman summoned Izuku to follow her, and Izuku didn't resist either. But you have powers, transport powers. You even just told me about dimensions. That means you know something about me and where I come from, right? Izuku asked, somewhat hopeful. Technically yes, but I can't make contact with your dimension. It's so far away that it's impossible to open a door to your house. You could get lost in a wave of realities, the woman said calmly, leaving Izuku in shock. What? Are you telling me there's no way back home? Izuku asked, very incredulous, feeling his heart wrench at the ancestor's words. Knowing this, the old woman just smiled as she shook her head. No, I didn't say that. I just said that at least from here, on Earth, it's impossible. You'd have to go out into space, to one end of the universe, to anchor yourself safely to yours, the ancient explained, and Izuku didn't question the woman for a moment. What is this place specifically? Izuku asked. This place, like many others in any universe or dimension, is an ancestral site, a line of defense to defend the land from magical enemies, intangible enemies, the old woman explained calmly, leaving Izuku very surprised. He hadn't expected these turns of events, to be honest. But he had a doubt. But why are you telling me these things? Why did you bring me here in the first place? Izuku asked curiously, but Ancestral shrugged. Well, I just wanted to talk to you, to be honest. Take it as a whim on my part. As for why I'm telling you these things, I suppose it's so you have a way to return home and want to learn the mystic arts. You have no reason to be here in our land, and you're more than aware of that. Let's just say I can give you a position to help you with your problem, the ancestral woman said calmly, looking at Izuku, who remained thoughtful. If it weren't for the fact that this woman knew about him, even about his world and the multiverse itself, he wouldn't believe her, and would leave as soon as she said something like the word mystic. In any case, he had to think about it. Don't worry about answering now, you'll have time to think about the proposal. In any case, good luck, Izuku Midoriya, Hero Deku. Ancestral started with those words, and as soon as he finished, a portal opened beneath Izuku, sending him to another place. This time, Izuku wasn't taken to the helicarrier. The strong breeze hit Izuku, causing him to activate his power to stay afloat above the surface of the sea. However, the image of the burning helicarrier was seen by Izuku, who watched as the ship fell from the 9,000 meters high where he was. Izuku could only think of one thing: Loki. It all ended like shit. Fury only had to blink with his one good eye left, and all the control he thought he had over his ship vanished just like that. Loki had gotten what he wanted, he just didn't refuse to act because of the boy's presence, who kept calling him Herald. Loki had divided the team he'd worked so hard to assemble. First, Izuku had been swallowed by a golden portal, and then Dr. Banner's stress had gotten out of hand. Captain America, as well as the rest of the team, had found their scapegoats and the real purpose of Act 3, energy weapons of mass destruction. The argument had erupted, the captain couldn't stand Tony anymore, and Banner was spiraling out of control. Then, just when he thought things couldn't get any worse, Loki decided to stop playing the captive. First, he locked his brother in the cage that was supposed to be for Hulk and threw him into the void. Hulk couldn't take it anymore and burst out of the flesh and blood closet that was Banner. If it weren't for the God of Thunder's anticipation before falling against his brother, the ship would surely have been torn to pieces. And to top it all off, Loki's flying monkeys entered the ship, killing personnel in their path. Captain America had to get rid of each one of them, and Natasha had captured the perpetrator of this orchestra, the controlled agent Barton. The worst part was that, due to that agent's cunning, one of the ship's engines had failed because of Barton, who damaged it with high-capacity explosives. The ship began to fall while losing power after being hacked by him, but Stark had done everything possible to repair the problem with the help of Rogers, who had gotten rid of his thugs. Everything was fine, things had calmed down. But they never expected a second engine to be destroyed in that way. It exploded. And now they were in this situation. "I want more stability, move further to the left," Fury demanded forcefully, but another tremor shook him and his crew. "Sir, the other engines are stressed, they'll start failing in less than 2 minutes." A panicked crew member shouted. "We've lost the third engine, sir. We're going to crash," Maria Heil said very seriously, hiding the panic everyone else was experiencing. Captain America was worried about the crew. At this rate, they'd start circling in the sky, and he doubted even he'd survive that. "Stark, what can you do?" the captain asked hopefully. "We can't do anything. The engine won't work." "Brace for impact," Tony said seriously, while they could only hear Fury's teeth clenching tightly, feeling how things were starting to spiral out of control. People were starting to lose their balance. But to Fury and the others' surprise, Tony spoke again. "I see it and I don't believe it," Tony's voice said over the communicator as Rogers spoke. "What's up, Tony?" the captain asked. "He's the Star Kid, he's here, he'll solve the problem and get them to safety," Tony said with a smile. "What?" But Midoriya had disappeared. "How is he here?" Natasha asked. "Where is it?" Fury asked seriously, as he felt everything returning to normal. Things stopped shaking, and the ship was stable again even without thrust. "Meanwhile," Tony answered. "It's right below us," said Tony, who was also accompanying him along with his new suit, which was also severely damaged due to being caught in the first engine that had been damaged. Meanwhile, Fury just stared at the monitor. "Show me camera 222 in section C of the ship's underside," Fury ordered, while one of his agents nodded. As soon as they found the camera, it focused on something somewhat unreal to see. Next to Tony, Izuku had embedded both of his hands into the metal of the ship and was carrying it with his arms, displaying a great display of unreal strength, beyond human limits. With his power at 100%, Izuku was carrying the helicarrier to a safe zone as if it were nothing, so he could keep the agents safe. Natasha couldn't help but smile at what she saw. "This leaves a lot to say," the woman said, seeing Fury smile. Loki was afraid of Midoriya. "He was calling him a herald for a reason," said Fury, gaining some understanding. They had new things to do in the future, but for now, he had to deal with the consequences of everything that happened today. So, for now, he could just let the boy do his job. Be the hero he was. That, and get the ship to safety as soon as possible. Izuku found himself on the helicarrier near the monitors that controlled the operation of the Flying Sea Mother. Sitting on a folding keyboard seat next to him was Nick, who had very little choice in the face of his current failure to bring together the most versatile beings the world could offer, the citizens of every town, country, and continent that inhabits this planet. After the ship was saved from its life-threatening fall to its inevitable end, Tony Stark did his best to repair the helicarrier's second propeller. He also tried to locate me in every way possible. He also got stuck with Hulk, but they couldn't find the whereabouts of either of them. Fortunately, the professional assassin was captured yesterday. He was responsible for all the technical disasters that nearly wiped out the entire crew of the flying ship. So far, the only explanation given by everyone present was that Clint Barton, Lucky's flying monkey, whom he considered a source of funds for his genocidal plans, had been manipulated by the Golden Horn Norse god with the help of his sparkling ancestral scepter. Now, this was the conclusion resulting from the events. The few exceptional people on Earth were drastically reduced. They gave me their mural to confront the problems that obviously frightened them, Caesar. But the most complicated thing is that, in the end, all they did was not only in vain, but it also made it clear to me how easily manipulated the Norse god Loki was. Of course, all this when Izuku disappeared from Fury's radar. "So, you disappeared out of nowhere?" Yuri asks very seriously, still calculating the possibilities that the team can be preserved, even with the loss of two strong men like Dr. Barrier and the Norse god of thunder. "Well, I didn't disappear. I was transported to Kathmandu, that's what Ancestral told me," Izuku explained, shrugging. He certainly didn't know what to say other than the truth. Some universal mages or whatever they were, bearers of the trademark registered to Central, brought him to their temple without much difficulty. Certainly, that small detail was a little disturbing, it seems, if he might add. "Did you end up in Nepal? Who's Ancestral?" "You know what? I don't want to hear it right now, we're on the ground." Fury reflected while running his hands all over his scraped head. Honestly, he was in so much trouble that he could barely process his current situation. He didn't want to get into another problem with strange mages inhabiting the planet for who knows how long. "What happened to them?" Izuku asked more seriously. He had been transported in the middle of nowhere, in front of the derailing helicarrier. He didn't have time to ask what was going on. There was also no time or moment to carry out the legal protocol of the heroic ministry and national defense. Well, he also had to keep in mind more often that he was no longer in his respective reality, in which all those laws of security protocol to private property governed every movement of a hero so that the person's wires wouldn't get crossed and cause a disaster with their almost inevitable struggles. Laws that reminded him that, although they were educated and selected as the highest potential of humanity, their respective exceptional future as exceptional beings is that they are above other people within society, as their respective protectors, and even so, they will not be gods. And as such, humans, like everyone else, should respect the law just like everyone else. In the end, it was the law that gave them the opportunity to be in a designated and exceptional location without them knowing they were forced to arrive. Eurydia, on the other hand, sighed, thinking about how much the recent troubles had cost her. She gently leaned back in her reclining chair. A whole shitty thing happened. Fury confessed. And in a way, Izuku had everything he needed to know with that respectively vague answer. The moment you disappeared, Lucky attacked. He started playing his mind games, that thing where he created copies of lotion with his god magic, and before we knew what was happening, Thor had been thrown off the ship, locked in the super-reinforced glass prison that Lucky was supposedly in. Fury couldn't help but go into detail as he watched all the people go into a work frenzy while still slowing down the ship's operation, equivalent to 2 nuclear bombs if it crashed into the sea, or anywhere else. Clearly, staying up in the sky for that long wasn't an option. "Let me guess. Dr. Banner. Did he go crazy and fly away?" Izuku asked, while Fury nodded. "He beat Thor up. Then Thor beat him up with his hammer before being ejected. A quarter of the tactical artillery team was reduced to nothing more than broken toys, a wasted miner's lot." Fury finished disappointedly looking south, with which he got up from his seat. "Well, I guess now it's my turn for this," he said as he began to inspect his suit. It was somewhat stretched and a little worn due to the unexpected experience of traveling through a quantum funnel of enhanced tachyons that tore apart reality itself. Unexpected shit without a doubt. Fury, for his part, was not surprised by Izuku's sudden action, who had finished inspecting his suit. "I suppose you're going after Loki, right?" Fury asked, knowing that more than a possibility, it was a clear fact. Your boy's morale was crushed, all because they couldn't understand each other. Or at least put their differences aside to solve a problem as serious as this mess. Izuku's words were very devastating for Fury, but he already knew that. "In my world," he continued, "a hero must be prepared for any situation, even managing to solve the adversities of the job with the help of strangers they'll never see again. You don't know them, you don't even know their power or what problems they have, but they always find a way to get ahead. Izuku expressed seriously while sending his gaze to the personnel management who were figuring out how to find a blind spot in the radars to be able to land the ship. They couldn't put their problems aside. They compromised the transmission and arrested the entire crew for not controlling their emotions. Everyone says that heroes are emotional. You are my world. Moving like that in this confusion would mean death. But I can't blame you either. He said that, waiting. Nick, for his part, nodded, obviously perfectly hiding his astonishment. You're right. Destiny didn't have much time for them to be a functioning team. She wanted to make them heroes, but in the end, they're not, Nick said, while Izuku shook his head. Anyone can be a hero. They just need time to resolve their differences. To reach an understanding, to be the heroes they will be. Izuku encouraged himself as he began his walk toward the exit. If you say so, boy. He approved a disc with a half smile. They both began to leave for the hallway when a small disturbance caused them both to stop walking. Focusing in that direction, Nick was a little outraged by further disturbances to the non-existent normality that the street had. There was your day, Nick, thinking that Iron Man was responsible for all this. However, the billionaire was carrying his metallic head with a pair of tongs in his hands. Accompanied by Steve Rogers, something very surprising for Fury. The captain also carried his well-polished and gleaming shield in his hands. And now what? Asked Fury from in front of Tony, who just walked past him, ignoring him, and then looked at Izuku. Let's go to Estrella, we need your help. Tony said hurriedly, while continuing to inspect his no longer shiny helmet. Rogers, for his part, stopped following Tony to explain the strange and rude action of the mechanic, genius, philanthropist. Accompanied by a number of other titles. And now what happened to him? Questioned Fury. We know where Lucky is. Rogers said seriously as he looked at Izuku. Get ready, this has just begun. And please, don't disappear again. And without another word, Rogers continued on his way in search of Romanov, who was with Clip Barton. It was clear to see that Izuku was somewhat surprised by the sudden actions of the team assembled for this Avengers initiative. Well, I guess they've put their differences aside. His son, with a wry smile on his face. You said it. Because of a few words from Fury, who continued on his way. He had to hold a meeting with the council as soon as possible to make it clear that they had the heavy artillery back with them. An hour later, Izuku saw the Avengers Initiative members approaching him. He was outside the combat aircraft zone. And this would definitely be very important for the world and its inhabitants.